Hello and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a really radical way to think about consciousness. It's all drawn from this fascinating text called the Gospel of the Aperture. All right, let's just jump right in, shall we? I want to start with a question that really gets to the core of things. It kind of challenges everything we think we know about ourselves. So, what if your consciousness? What if it isn't something you have?
But what if it's actually an opening that you are? Yeah, think about that for a second. That's the core idea here. Instead of us possessing consciousness like it's some object we own, the idea is that we are the channel. We're the opening that it flows through.
So the central metaphor for this whole thing is called the aperture. And a great way to think about it is like the lens on a camera, right? It's got a certain shape, a certain width, maybe some filters on it. Now, those things don't change what reality is out there, but oh boy, they absolutely change your entire experience of it. Okay, so that brings up a pretty big question, right? If we all start with this amazing potential for openness, how in the world do we end up feeling so constricted and limited most of the time? The text has a name for this process. It's called the Great Narrowing. The idea here is that we all start out with this wide open aperture. Just picture a baby's experience of the world. I mean, it's not wise, of course, but it is incredibly direct. It's just this unfiltered, immediate, raw flow of sensory information coming in. But then, of course, a very natural process starts to happen. As we learn language, we start carving up the world into categories. And the most basic one is me versus not me. This distinction builds and builds until it forms a whole self-story, a narrative of who I am. By the time we're adults, that aperture is narrowed down so much that our filters, they don't even feel like filters anymore. They just feel like reality.
And for this constricted state, the source material uses a really powerful metaphor. It calls it Egypt. It's meant to represent a kind of slavery, but not to some pharaoh or external force. No, it's a slavery to our own narrow, defended, tiny point of view.
And what's so brilliant about this idea is that this Egypt can take all sorts of forms. You could be living in the Egypt of fear, where your aperture is just constantly scanning for threats, missing all the good stuff. Or maybe it's the Egypt of story, where everything has to fit the narrative you have about yourself. And get this, there's even a spiritual Egypt, where you can use all these lofty concepts about openness to actually build thicker walls and become even more closed off.
But here's the good news. The most crucial point, really, is that this state, it isn't permanent. The text says that our original open nature is always there, and it announces itself. It finds ways to break through these little cracks in our defensive walls.
So what are these cracks? Well, they're those moments when reality just gets through, When you hear a piece of music and it moves you to tears before your brain even has a chance to analyze it, that's the crack of beauty. Or when a profound loss just shatters the story you had about your life. Even falling in love, that's a huge crack, because for a moment, someone else becomes more important than your own self-protection.
So, okay, this isn't just a beautiful abstract theory. It actually builds into a very concrete practice. The source lays out 3 practical laws, if you will, for intentionally widening our own aperture.
All right, law number 1. This one is, it's profound. It says that attention isn't just something you do with your consciousness. It's what shapes your consciousness. Think about it. Whatever you consistently pay attention to is literally building the very architecture of your experience, day in and day out. So, how do we practice this? It's pretty simple, actually. Each day, just try to deliberately pay attention to something way bigger than your own personal drama. Look up at the sky, but don't just see it as a backdrop. See it as the edge of infinity. Or feel your own brief, precious life in the vast context of cosmic time. Just thinking about these huge realities can start to stretch that aperture wider.
Okay, on to law number 2. This one is all about our internal battles. We all do this, right? We fight our own experience. We resist our sadness, our anger, our anxiety. Well, the law says that that very act of fighting is a form of constriction. When you fight it, you're just tightening the aperture around the very thing you're trying to get away from.
The practice for this it's subtle, but it's so powerful. It's not about trying to crush your resistance. Instead, it's just about noticing that feeling, that internal no, that clenching. And instead of fighting it, you just note that it's there. And then, with real curiosity, you ask yourself, what is this resistance trying to protect? That question alone, that little bit of curiosity, is an act of opening.
And finally, law number 3. This one basically says you can't see the shape of your own lens while you're running around like crazy. I mean, our culture is a non-stop engine of distraction, right? And in all that frantic energy, we never get a moment to actually observe the filters that are creating our entire reality.
So the practice? It's simple, but man, it is not easy. Sit still. Do nothing. I know, right? The urge to move, to check your phone, to do anything, it's gonna come up. Big time. The practice is to not act on it. Just observe it. Stay with it. Because when you allow what's there to just be there, you can finally start to see the filters you normally can't see, precisely because you're always looking through them.
So, when you put all of this together, it's more than just a few neat practices. It really points to a massive shift in how we see ourselves, a total change in our fundamental identity. And this really gets to the heart of it. The core distinction is this: you are not some static, solid thing that has consciousness. You are the dynamic, changing shape of the opening itself. I mean, your personality, your memories, that's all just the unique shape of your aperture. But the awareness that's flowing through it, that's universal. The shape will change, for sure, but the flow itself, that continues.
And what this means is that the whole goal isn't to, achieve some far-off future state of enlightenment. The goal is way simpler. It's just to recognize the awareness that is already here, the opening that is happening right now, in this very moment, as you're listening to my voice.
And that leaves us with one final, and I think pretty provocative, question that just brings this whole thing right into your lap. Everything you experience is a direct function of how you are open. So, just take a second. Ask yourself, how open are you right now?